Welcome to Sales Talk for CEOs. I'm glad you're here. I'll be interviewing CEOs who have successfully scaled their B2B sales organization. In each episode, I'll start by uncovering the sales background of each CEO, dig into the strategies they use to build their sales organization, and wrap it up with what the future holds. We'll cover the good, the bad, and the ugly of scaling a sales organization. I'm your host, Alice Hyman. Every company deserves to have an unfair advantage against their competitors, but most companies don't have that. And that is why I brought this very special guest on Sales Talk for CEOs today to talk with you about just how you can get an unfair advantage and grow your business like a weed. Stu Heinecke, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you. What a great description. That's so cool. I love being able, the weeds out, all of that stuff, unfair advantages. That's exactly what we need.
It is exactly what we need today. I mean, so many companies, my own clients, as well as other CEOs that I know out there, they're telling me sales is hard. We're not able to talk to people the way we used to. You know, when I was young and I was in sales, I could just pick up the phone and actually call a VP of sales or a senior leader of a company, and they would actually answer their phone. Imagine that. This was a million years ago. And they would talk to me because there was no internet then, and they had no other way to find out about what I was selling to. So they had to talk to me, right? But today we just don't have that. People don't pick up their phone. They don't want any more email from you. They don't want a spammy LinkedIn. They need an unfair advantage. So Stu, tell us how we can get an unfair advantage today against our competitors.
Oh my God. Well, look, I think if you can, for one thing, we have the background of two books. So I wrote How to Get a Meeting with Anyone, and also more recently, How to Grow Your Business Like a Weed. So if we go back to that first book, it's kind
and
of—
I'll put those in the show notes. If you're watching, though, you can see the book, but I will put those in the show notes for you because those are two of my favorite books. And How to Get a Meeting with Everyone, as you know, Stu, I have sent that to every one of my clients. And now I'm starting to send out How to Grow Your Business Like a Weed as well, because that's one of my unfair advantages. I have you, Stu, as one of my unfair advantages.
Hey, well, I had you as one of my sources, so we're pretty square there. But so you asked about unfair advantages and about getting meetings, and that is, if you can get a meeting with virtually anyone, especially now, especially during those the conditions or in those conditions that you just described, it's like having a superpower or certainly an unfair advantage. So yeah, so I don't know. Are you asking how to do it? Because I think it's kind of simple.
Yeah, well, let's go through a couple of things. The first thing I do want to say, though, on that is getting meetings is harder, right? Everyone is complaining that it's hard to get meetings with people who can buy from you. So we simply have to solve that first, because most salespeople, once they can get that meeting, do a good job of listening and finding out what the problem is and digging into it and gathering all the people. You know, I deal with a business-to-business complex sales, so there's many people involved. Salespeople know how to do these things, but they're not even getting a chance to do them. So we really have to help them get a meeting with anyone. So let's start with that as an unfair advantage. And again, you can read the book, but let's talk about how salespeople or CEOs or anyone can get a meeting with anyone that they really want to. What are some of the tactics, Stu, that they can use?
Yeah, well, first of all, I don't mean to diminish the importance of the things that we always knew were true and important. And for one, having a network is very important. Being able to get introductions is very important. I mean, that works. It's a shortcut. But if you can't get those, or if you don't have that connection with the person you're trying to reach out to, then I think you've got to do a couple of things. I mentioned just a moment ago, I think it's pretty simple, which is you got to do something that obviously you need to stand out to them. You need to do something audacious, I think, well, not just audacious, but also you need to do something that's relevant. You need to know something about what this person is dealing with, or what the problem is that they're experiencing that you'd like to help them with. You need to know a little bit going into the meeting or going into even the ask for the meeting. And so if it's relevant, timely, and I would say audacious. And by that, I mean you do something that has the person on the other end saying, "Oh my God, who is this? I love the way you think. This is incredible. We have to meet." And so there are ways to do that, and they're pretty. Some of them are pretty entertaining, and some of them are just sort of like, yeah, you know what, that just makes sense.
Yes, yes. Well, I love that. And I think that what we've seen as examples are very expensive. And I think we have to get away from that idea that it has to be expensive. So, for example, Gary Vaynerchuk will buy a signed jersey of some very famous athlete that might cost
Yeah,
$10,000 and have it framed and shipped to someone he wants to have a conversation with. Well, we can't all afford to do that, obviously, right? But there are so many things that we can do. And when we're going out cold, right? So you and I both agree, build a network, try to get introductions, 100% do that first. But when you do need to go out cold, if you gather some information and you know something that this person is going to be interested in, then you can provide something very specific. So for example, in your how to grow your business like a weed book turned into a how to get a meeting with anyone, because you packaged it up beautifully in a
yeah,
box that had the same beautiful drawings of weeds that you had on the book and inside the book. And then people get this beautiful box and they're like, oh my gosh, I got a gift, right? And they open it and it's got a beautiful card in it, it's got dandelion seeds in it, and then it has this great book that's going to tell me how to grow my business like a weed. So of course now you've got my attention and I would like to have a call with you, right? Well, now maybe everybody hasn't written a book. So let's talk about some other tactics they can use to get these meetings.
yeah, sure. Well, by the way, books still are valid even if you haven't written one. I mean, send some of your favorite books.
Right.
In fact,
Well, I send
this.
your books. I haven't
You're
written a book, so I send
my
yours.
inspiration. This secret quite well. That you send some of my books. I know you send other people's books, and then you
Yes,
stand
I
out as
do.
someone who's you're saying, look, I'm just helping you learn. I'm sharing the learning that I'm experiencing as well, but I'm just helping you. And I'm not just being self-promoting by sending my own books at you. So books are a great device, actually. That you don't have to have written one. Right over your shoulder, if I may bring that to everyone's attention, is one of my devices. So I wrote these books, and I'm an agency owner and so forth, but I'm also one of the Wall Street Journal cartoonists, and so so I have used my cartoon. That's been my device to get through to people of my whole career. So I discovered really quickly that if I send a cartoon about the person I'm reaching out to, generally I get through. They love it. They really love it. If I reach out just to their assistant first, who is the salespeople
Right.
are always saying, yeah, well, the assistants are always screening me. How do I get around them? You don't. You team up with them. And so when I reach out to assistants, when I'm sending those, I call them big boards. You have one right over your shoulder, but I'm sending the cartoon. I'll call the assistant to say, "Hi, my name is Stu Heinecke. I'm sending a print of a cartoon. Oh, sorry, I'm one of the Wall Street Journal cartoonists, and I'm sending a print of one of my cartoons. It's about your boss. So I just want." Usually they're saying, "What? Really?" So. Yeah, so if you wouldn't mind, I mean, I want it to be a surprise to your boss, but not to you, of course. So would you mind if I send you an email with the details? And so I involve the assistants very quickly, and there's that statement that you've got to hook everybody, but certainly have to hook the assistant very quickly because they're deciding whether you should get through or not, and whether this is important to their executive or not. So that's we're going to talk about unfair advantages. That's one of my big ones. I mean, look at that. I get to show up as a Wall Street Journal
Yeah.
cartoonist and send cartoons to
Well, you have certainly an unfair advantage of being a Wall Street Journal cartoonist. But for those of you who are listening and not watching, let me tell you that I have a board behind me that's probably
It's
10 by
18,
15
18 by
or
24.
okay, 18 by 24. Not very good with measurements here. But anyway, and it's got two ladies sitting talking. It's a really cool cartoon. And it says, Alice Hyman can tell a lot about a person by their pipeline.
Yeah, actually,
And I
I'm
mean,
going to
it's
jump
so
in.
clever because
she's telling her friend Alice Hyman says you can tell a lot about a person just by looking at their pipeline. I tend to agree, but of course, look what's going on there. I mean, that is I've specifically made that for you, Alice, because
Right,
you're
right.
helping people grow
Obviously,
their
right?
pipelines. But I use
Exactly.
that
And
same
so
one.
that
Yeah, sorry, I was going to say I used that same one to get a hold of Mark Cuban. So in his version of that, she's saying Mark Cuban said, she's making the gestures, and Mark Cuban says you can tell a lot about a person just by looking at their Mavs tickets. I tend to agree. So he owns the Mavericks, right? Well, that thing ended up on his wall, and I would say that in general, if you're going to send something, you should. If this is to request a meeting, one of the tricks is send something that is an item of fascination, something they'll never throw away. So I would imagine that cartoon
right.
is going to end up like the one that I sent to Mark is framed. It's up in his office, and I hope that yours will stick around. You just got that today, I think, right? I think so,
I
but
did. Yeah,
I
I got
think
it yesterday, but I got to
oh,
open it
nice,
with you, which was wonderful. And
it's
I'm
nice.
sure that will end up framed on my wall. So I think that you definitely have that unfair advantage, as I mentioned, of being a cartoonist. But not all of us are going to be that talented. And I'm going to just share something that I do that's super simple that gets attention, and it is something that sticks around. I find local artists in my community who do beautiful photography or artwork, and it's all about Nevada. And I handwrite a note to people, and I will come years later to their office and see those cards still on their bookshelf or on their desk or pinned on their bulletin board. That costed me $2.50 and 15 minutes of my time.
You know what's so
So
cool
I
about
didn't
that?
have to be an artist,
Yeah,
and I didn't have to spend money, a lot of
and
money.
you gave a piece of yourself in that. You're reaching out from Nevada. I mean, that's where you live, so you're in Nevada. You're giving a piece of yourself, which is what I'm doing with the cartoon, and what we should be doing
Right.
in these outreach campaigns. That I mean that makes so much sense, and I remember you telling me that in our interview together for the book, and I think I just love that idea. I think it's a really cool idea, Alice. You know, we're talking about unfair advantages, and when I interviewed you for the book, for the weeds book, for how to grow your business like a weed, you had said to me that one of your great unfair advantages is that you show up usually as a speaker at events. Like if you're there, you're pardon me, you're one of the speakers. My God, you get to show up to everyone from stage. Everyone knows who you are. Everyone comes up to you afterwards and says, "Alice, could we collaborate this way?" I'm sure you get clients that way just because you're up on stage. Not everybody does that. Certainly if they can do it, not everybody is asked to do it. So that's an unfair advantage, just like my stage when I'm a cartoonist in the journal.
It absolutely makes sense. It is definitely an unfair advantage for me. I always get customers when I speak. If I speak, people come up to me, like you said, and we talk about it. We have further meetings, and then they become my client. I think that CEOs today could use that as an unfair advantage. Maybe not all CEOs, but many CEOs have a wealth of knowledge about the field that they're in, right? They started this company for a reason. They know what problem they solve. They know that problem really well, and they could be on podcasts. They could be interviewed for articles. They could make videos. They could speak on a stage in front of people, because you're not trying to sell your product or service when you're speaking. You're trying to help people solve a problem with your talk when you're the speaker. And I believe that many CEOs today could give their sellers that unfair advantage if they would consider doing those things. It's not that hard to get on podcasts. Look, podcast hosts like me, we need a guest every week. So we're looking for people to be in our podcast. So it would be simple for them to have someone in their marketing team reach out. Their own marketing team can build the articles and the videos with the thought leadership from the CEO, and or they could go out to other companies who might like that thought leadership, or they could speak at a conference or speak on a panel. So I think that's again an inexpensive way to gain an unfair advantage, is to have the CEO or another thought leader for the company. It could be a CRO or a CMO or some other just really expert person at your company, regardless of their title. They could get out there and evangelize and talk about the problem in public and draw people in to your salespeople so that your salespeople could have conversations with them.
Yeah, yeah, and actually, I think I should give a little bit of context to why we're talking about unfair advantages too, because so
Yeah.
how to grow your business like a weed. Its base or the genesis is I was driving down the Santa Monica Freeway one day many years ago, and it was when traffic was really moving fast. So we're just whizzing by, and I noticed a dandelion growing from a crack in the concrete median, and I just thought, that's so impressive. I mean, how on the one hand, we're so used to seeing that kind of thing, but on the other hand, saying, how on earth did it get there? Well, we know how it got there. They have seeds that are designed to float around and probe every possible opportunity to take root, and I was just so impressed because there are no other, like there aren't apple trees growing out of the cracks or petunias.
No.
It's just weeds.
No.
Only weed, like they couldn't make it as a weed, right? But it got, as I drove by, I just thought, that's fascinating. Look what that thing is doing. Look what it's pulling off. I would love to follow that example and live up to it in my career. And so it got me thinking, well, what is it about weeds
Yeah.
that causes them to spread and grow and dominate and defend their turf and all that? I mean, what is it? What is it about weeds that makes them so tough as competitors? And do they all do they have a unified model? And it turns out they do. That's why I wrote the book. So the model is that they leverage they leverage a fierce mindset. Odd to think that weeds would have a mindset, but they do. They've leveraged a fierce mindset and unfair advantages against collective scale.
Yeah.
And they do it according to a process that is both millions of years old, but also absolutely alive and vibrant and ready to adapt to any challenge. And they do. They meet any challenge. They do it quickly. So the reason we're talking about so much about unfair advantages right now is because that's part of that weeds growth model. And if a business doesn't have unfair advantages, but trust me, you do. I'm just going to say, if a business doesn't have unfair advantages, it shouldn't be in business.
Yeah.
It shouldn't even exist, and it won't
Right.
exist for
Well,
long.
and it won't, and they don't.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah,
They go out of business.
yeah, exactly. That's why they go out of business. They didn't have the unfair advantages that they needed. I would guess that maybe that's certainly one prime reason. But those unfair advantages are like force multipliers in the military. They cause your effect to be much greater, and actually just your survivability, I suppose, and your influence and everything that you need to make a business whole and vibrant and to grow rapidly is tied up in that model.
Yeah. And I'll tell you, we go out there and spend money on marketing that isn't working. And what we could be doing is getting a think tank together within our own company and maybe even gathering a few of our customers and saying, what can we use as an unfair advantage? How can we be like that dandelion who grew in the crack of a freeway with cars going by?
Isn't that
How can
crazy?
we be that dandelion and be there as our customer is driving by
Yeah,
so
yeah,
that they'll see us? Right. And
yeah.
I think that if we redirected some of our energy and our money to really thinking about what these unfair advantages are, our companies could really, really grow like a weed.
Exactly. They could. And, we start with some unfair advantages or things that we can turn into unfair advantages. I mean, I don't know if it's an unfair advantage that you live in Nevada, but you used it in a really brilliant way in your outreach. And so probably little things can be turned into unfair advantages, but also big things. I mean, so location can be a great advantage. I mean, not just which state are you in, but let's say what the foot traffic is like. If you
Yeah.
need foot traffic, if other businesses are drawing a lot of foot traffic, that's a great place to be. That's kind of an unfair advantage
Yeah.
to you. And by
Yeah.
unfair advantage, what I mean is I want your competitors looking at whatever these are, saying, oh my God, that's so totally unfair. How the hell are we going to beat that? So those are the ones that I'm talking about. And I mean, I know I've got a bunch of them. I know you do too. And I think that probably most of your listeners are saying, yeah, you know what? I do have unfair advantages. We should be taking stock of those, but then constantly looking for ways to create more. Well, be aware of the ones and use the ones that we have, but also then create new ones.
I think that we have the opportunity to do that when we're at trade shows, when we hold events. We can send things in the mail. But I think another simple one that many companies are starting to use but could use more and better is video, right? It can give you an unfair advantage. Think about it. Your salespeople most of them, you hired them because they have a great personality, but that personality doesn't come through when it's in an email, a written email. But if they make a video and they say, hello, we haven't met yet, but I can't wait to meet you because I want to talk about these kinds of things with you and help you. And then I send that video via email. I can use that as an unfair advantage. Again, that doesn't cost a lot to do. You need some little video software, and there's a bazillion of them out there. So I think company leaders, CEOs, push your teams to think further, push your teams to innovate, right? And really use the unfair advantages that you already have, are not expensive, and they're just right there, right? And then maybe even come up with some more of these things that you can do. And right now we're just talking about to get a conversation started, right? The things you can do just to get a meeting with someone who you have no connection with through your network and can't get an introduction, versus just cold calling or having, someone dialing the phone and trying to get an appointment or sending more emails. Stop doing that and do something different. So I think we've kind of made that point. Probably hit it home a little hard, but it's a good point to make. Let's move from there to some of the other things that weeds do, because I can't think of a CEO that doesn't want to grow their business like a weed, right? Everyone that I work with, they want not just double-digit growth. Some of them want triple-digit growth. They want to double in size in a very short period of time. They want to become unicorns. They want their investors to be really happy. So what are some of the other things that weeds do that we as CEOs can take in and help our companies do better?
Well, I think. Well, so I mentioned the model. It's a fierce mindset. I would call it a weed mindset, but I don't mean this weed. Right? It's the weeds that we know. We're talking about weeds that grow voraciously, but having that fierce mindset is really important. And I think that the key to that mindset, and why would we talk about a mindset when we're talking about plants? They don't have brains, so what is that even about? But if you watch what they're doing, it's evident that there is let's say, the equivalent of a mindset. When you cut them down, they're immediately back to growing back and replacing whatever was just damaged. They're aggressive and urgent and resilient and adaptive.
Yes.
They are exactly what you need to be successful as an entrepreneur, and so that's part of it. But then we've talked a little bit about unfair advantages.
Well, just pause there for a second.
Yeah,
pause there for a second, because I think that let's put that mindset over to the CEO. You can't grow your business like a weed if you don't have the right mindset. If we're still having our salespeople, for example, sell the way they sold 10 years ago, that's not going to work. The mindset has to change around that. If we're still thinking more internally about our own sales process than we are about the customer journey, the customer's buying process, that's not going to work. So we're going to have to change our mindset around that. And so I think the weeds have that mindset, like you said, of resilience, of growth, of stick-to-itiveness, of adapting. And I think that CEOs today need to get that weed mindset firmly implanted so they can really direct the leaders of their company to do things differently, more like the weeds.
I think so. Actually, I should add a couple more attributes to their mindset. They're critical. One of them is they just deal with what is, right? I mean, we get overcome with emotion very easily. Weeds don't have emotions. And I think if they could talk to us, they'd be saying, look, we see that you have emotions. We don't have them. We see that they get in your way. We would suggest that you just allow your actions to lead your emotions, not the other way around. I mean, like if we were talking about just working out, I don't really feel like it. If you're waiting until you feel like it, you'll never do it. But if you let the action lead the emotion, you'll go do it. in a disciplined way, and it will lead to feelings of, oh my God, that was great, but now I really feel like it. But they deal with what is, and I think most CEOs do that, but I think that's why they're CEOs.
Yeah.
But if you're not dealing with what is, like, I mean, those are the people who are just they're just sort of, oh my God, well, I thought I deserved more. I thought this, if only this had happened, then that would have happened. Or, get off it and deal with what is. Your job is to deal with what is now. Do it with deadly precision. You've just got to do that. So that's one. The other thing that's really wonderful about the nature of weeds is that they're big, big, big collaborators. They don't do anything alone. If you watch, let's say if you walk out today and you notice a dandelion in your lawn, look up and you'll notice, if you were only thinking you were seeing one or there's only one, look up, because they never do anything alone. They always do everything at scale. And that natural collaboration, I think, is wonderful for, let's say, culture. So internal culture. We want to have our team be collaborators. I think that's a wonderful part of the mindset, but also just us as business people, we should be collaborating. I mean, the reason I sent you the big board is because I'm suggesting, you read the copy, I'm sure, I want to collaborate with you. And we should be collaborating with everybody they're saying, go out and collaborate with the smartest people you know and do it as quickly as you can. And yes. So if we're talking about let's say a SaaS startup, for example, then I think you should be finding all kinds of partnerships and collaborations. Open up sales channels that wouldn't otherwise be available to you. You should be doing a lot of partnering, because that's what the weeds are telling us. Partner up, work with the smartest people you know, and everybody wins.
Right. And what's so important about that is that I think CEOs sometimes think of traditional channels of partnering. Think about some non-traditional channels of partnering. So think about other companies that sell to your ideal customer, but don't compete with you.
Yeah. Yeah.
They may not be an official channel, someone who's going to resell your product, but they have those relationships built because they're selling into the same ideal customer profiles. So their salespeople could have conversations with your salespeople. You could have conversations with the CEO of those companies and learn how they got into these companies and learn what they know about these companies that would make it easier for you. Again, an unfair advantage. So if I'm talking to some $5 billion company I'm trying to sell to, and I find 3 other vendors that sell to them but don't compete with me, that's an unfair advantage. I talk with them, I get to know them. Maybe we even have an event together and entertain more ideal customers, right? We all each invite our set of customers, then we all get the benefit of that. That could simply be an unfair advantage. And this collaboration you're talking about leads to that another route for an unfair advantage.
Yeah, it does. And I got to tell you, right now there's so much talk of recession. Some are in kind of a fantasy land and don't believe that the same definition that has defined recessions in the past doesn't define them this time, but they're wrong.
Right.
We're going into, look, the thing that's always constant is that there's always disruption. And so,
right.
Why don't we say at least we're heading into recession? All signs point to we're heading into recession, and
we're having a disruption.
Into disruption. And so here's the really cool thing about weeds: they thrive in disrupted ground. They love disrupted ground. So there's something about what they do that is right about what we should do during these times of disruption. And so we just went through a big one. The pandemic is a huge one. And we've been through many. Those of us who are CEOs probably have been through at least a few cycles of recessionary times. And, I think if you use weed strategy, I think those then can become times of great opportunity. We know that they're great times of great opportunity. When we look back on, let's say, the recession, we can see who won. I mean, like, Amazon did really well during the recession.
Peloton, that's right. We can see which companies did well.
Yeah, there are a bunch of them that some restaurants did really, really well while the rest of them perished. So, so we can look back and see, well, what are they doing? Because they use those times of disruption as
Yeah.
times of great opportunity. So in a way, I'm actually kind of excited that there's a recession coming because I think it's going to be a time of great opportunity. And I know that that the way that you pull that opportunity from it is by using using the strategies and tools and so forth that the weeds have been using because that's what they do. They thrive in disruption.
Oh my gosh, I could talk to you about this all day. However, I don't think our listeners want to listen quite that long. So I want to wrap up here and just really kind of talk to the CEOs who may be a little bit nervous about this disruption, call it a recession or whatever you want to call it, but this next disruption, because there will always be more. And in thinking about how they can get the weed mindset to really do well and thrive in this environment, what are just a couple of key things, Stu, that may be in the book or on the top of your head that CEOs should do right now to make sure they can thrive in the disruption?
I would say I wouldn't want to minimize the model. I think you should apply the whole model, and so
Okay.
so, but there are a few things that jump out to me immediately. One is if there's any form of, let's say, one-to-one leverage in your operation, if you are part of the deliverable stream, get out of you need to fix that because you become a bottleneck to your growth. So rooting out all forms of one-to-one leverage and moving toward a multi-channel and then collective leverage or scale makes all kinds of sense. I mean, that's what the weeds are doing, and it just makes so much sense for us to do that. And that really means, I think that means immediately go out and find people that you can start creating new alliances with. And you can see that that's what I'm doing. You're part of my network, and that's why I sent you the big board. And you read the copy. That's what I wanted. I want to do that with you. And I would say I'd say another one is really focus on those unfair advantages because if a business doesn't have unfair advantages, it really has no business being in business. So I would say
Yeah.
those are the two things that jump out immediately, but it's really applying the whole thing. And when you do that in a holistic way, then you will be acting like a weed. You'll become a total weed yourself, right? Um, and then
Right.
so
You're going to be a total weed and you're going to hire a chief weed officer, right?
that's right. That's right. And I'm just going to make a couple other suggestions. One, if you like what you're hearing, you should buy the book, and I think you'll be amazed at what the weeds have to offer us in terms of growth strategy. They're just amazing. When you watch what they're up to, good God, they're unbelievable. And I think when you read the book, you'll start to notice what the weeds are doing around you, and you'll be saying, "Oh my God, look at how they're designed, what they're doing, what they're pulling off. It's incredible." Um, and then
It's
I mean,
fascinating. It's truly fascinating.
if you really want to go dig way into the weeds, we're doing some masterminds, and I'd love to tell you about that sometime. We have our first one coming up in October, and so I'm really excited about that. We're doing it on the island. I live on an island in the Seattle area, so we're doing it on Whidbey Island, and that's gonna be a blast. That's coming up in October.
Yeah, let's talk some more about that just for a minute. But I also want to make a plug for the other books. So I think that everyone should read How to Grow Your Business Like a Weed. If you're a salesperson, you read it and you grow your little territory, right? Or your big territory like a weed. If you're the CEO of a company, you apply it to your entire company. So I think this book fits for anyone who wants to do what they do better than they do it today. For sales specifically, CEOs, please have your sales leaders read How to Get a Meeting with Anyone, and then have them brainstorm with you. There it is.
Yeah,
If
there
you're
it is.
watching, you can see it, but I'll put it in the show notes as
Backward.
well. How to Get a Meeting with Anyone. And yes, let your team bring you some ideas because they may need some budget for this and they may need to do things a little differently. That means maybe the way you're measuring activity will have to change. So it's a bigger discussion, but have them come up with some ways that they can get a meeting with anyone, the meetings they're not getting right now, and have them bring that to you and work with them to support that and make that happen, right? So I would highly recommend both books. And then if you want more of Stu, this mastermind sounds wonderful. So quickly tell us, Stu, what are you going to do in this mastermind? Because maybe I'm going to come, I think. I
Oh man,
really, sounds
I'll
like I
send
should
you
be
the
there.
information. I would love to have you there. That would be amazing. Well, so we've rented a place, a condo in Langley, the little village of Langley, Washington, on Whidbey Island. It's like 2 blocks, and First and Second Street. The storefronts on First Street are on stilts, kind of over the water almost. They go down a cliff over the water, and so it's a beautiful little spot. And we're gonna have a little reception Friday night. People will come in from, I don't know wherever they're coming in from. They'll come in, and it's just a gorgeous place to be. And we're going to have a little reception. And we're going to talk about weed mindset. I love weed mindset. It's incredible. And part of what we'll be doing to instill or just to just stimulate that mindset is every morning. So Saturday and Sunday morning, we're going to get up at the crack of dawn and run on the beach together. Just to let some action lead our emotions, and then we're going to focus on what are your unfair advantages and how do you create new ones, and then I mean, those are the two things that we'll really focus on: it are unfair advantages, and then also forming alliances that can change everything, that can create new unfair advantages. Those alliances alone can do a lot of that. So that's what we'll be covering.
Great. That does sound like something I would definitely want to do. So I want to get that information from you. I'll put that in the show notes as well. And I just want to say to every CEO and everyone who supports a CEO out there that's listening, I want you to grow your business like a weed. I want you to listen to the weeds and get that weed mindset. And I want you to have those unfair advantages so that your business will grow and thrive. And so I'm always here to help you with that. Stu can help you with that. There's many others out there that can help you. So seek that help that you need and grow your business like a weed. Stu, thank you so much for being on the show today. I so appreciate you. I love that, the book, and I love that you sent it to me in the special packaging. We didn't even get to talk about that, but I have a video on LinkedIn that shows me unboxing this book, the way that Stu packaged it. And my CEOs are all going to get a book like that from me now in a beautiful package as well, because I love the idea so much. And thank you for my big board, and just thank you for all you contribute to my world and the world of others to make us all better. Thank you.
Alice, thank you so much for having me on the show. What a blast and what a thrill to be here with you and to know you. It's a blast. So thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to Sales Talk for CEOs. You can find me at aliceheiman.com. Be sure and connect with me on LinkedIn and let me know that you heard the show. If you found value in today's episode, please subscribe, write a review, and share the show with another CEO.